You're being robbed right now, not by strangers wearing masks, but by people sitting at your dinner table. People you call friends. People you've loved. People you've invested years building with. They're extracting your energy, harvesting your ideas, colonizing your future while you defend them with words like loyalty, history, and commitment. And here's what makes it worse. You know something is wrong. You feel the drain. You sense the imbalance. But you've been conditioned to believe that questioning your relationships makes you a bad person, that cutting people off is cruel, that real love means accepting everyone unconditionally, no matter how much they take from you. Niccolo Machiavelli understood something in 1513 that most people still haven't grasped today. When he wrote about power and alliances in Renaissance Italy, he wasn't writing fairy tales about soulmates and destiny. He was documenting the brutal mechanics of human nature as it actually operates, not as we wish it would operate. He watched princes fall because they chose advisors based on sentiment rather than capability. He saw empires crumble because someone confused affection with strategic value. He witnessed loyalty evaporate the moment circumstances shifted. Machiavelli philosophy wasn't cynical for the sake of being dark. It was realistic for the sake of survival. He understood that in the game of power, and life is nothing but a continuous negotiation of power, your alliances determine everything. Who stands beside you determines whether you build or collapse, whether you advance or stagnate, whether you become who you're capable of becoming or settle into comfortable mediocrity. Here's what Machiavelli knew, and what this exploration of relationship psychology is going to teach you. The people in your life are not accidents of fate. They're not gifts from the universe. They're not cosmic assignments. They're the result of your selection standards. And if your standards are based on how someone makes you feel in isolated moments, rather than what they actually contribute to your trajectory, you're building your entire kingdom on quicksand. The concept of someone being meant for you has been corrupted into this passive, romantic notion. Like the universe is going to deliver the right people if you just believe hard enough. That you'll feel some magical click and suddenly know. That signs of true love arrive wrapped in butterflies and perfect timing. That's not Machiavellian strategy. That's not strategic thinking applied to human connection. That's you surrendering your agency to fortune while calling it faith. What meant for you actually means, in the context of power dynamics and self-mastery, is strategic psychological alignment. It means their ambition amplifies yours instead of competing with it. It means their darkness integrates with yours instead of consuming it. It means their presence multiplies your capacity for power rather than dividing your attention across pointless drama and emotional maintenance. There are 8 signs, 8 specific markers that separate true allies from parasites wearing friendship masks. Once you see them, you won't be able to unsee how empty most relationships actually are. You'll look at your current circle and realize you've been tolerating dead weight. And that realization, while painful, is exactly where transformation begins. Sign 1. They wound you to save you. Most relationship advice tells you to surround yourself with supportive people. People who lift you up. People who believe in you. That sounds beautiful until you realize that supportive has become code for never challenges you. The person who agrees with everything you say is not your ally. They're your enemy in disguise, and here's why. Machiavelli observed something crucial about flatterers that applies directly to modern relationship psychology. He wrote that there's no way to guard yourself against flattery except by making it clear that telling you the truth won't cost someone your favor. Think about the implications of that. The only defense against being systematically lied to is creating an environment where honesty doesn't get punished. But most people do the exact opposite. They punish truth-tellers and reward flatterers. Someone points out a flaw in their plan, and they get defensive. Someone validates a bad decision, and they get promoted to trusted confidant. Over time, this creates a selection pressure. The only people who stay in your circle are people willing to lie to you. Your ego wants to be worshipped. It craves validation. When someone tells you that your idea is brilliant, that you're right, that you're special, it triggers a dopamine response. That feels like love. That feels like support. But it's not support, it's manipulation. Sometimes conscious, usually unconscious, but manipulation nonetheless. The person who truly cares about your trajectory will risk your anger to protect your future. They'll be the one to look you in the eye and say you're wrong. You're being emotional. You're wasting your potential on this. You're making a decision based on ego instead of strategy. This stings. It feels like an attack. Your first instinct is to defend yourself, to shut them down, to find someone who will just tell you what you want to hear. But notice the difference between an attack and a challenge. Someone who attacks you wants to lower your status. They're trying to diminish you, to make themselves feel superior, to win a social contest. Someone who challenges you wants to raise your standards. They're trying to sharpen you, to protect you from yourself, to make you actually capable of achieving what you claim you want. The person meant for you will challenge your assumptions in private. They'll point out the gap between what you say you value and how you actually behave. They'll ask uncomfortable questions about whether you're building toward something or just maintaining comfortable delusions. This is one of the clearest signs of true love in the Machiavellian sense. Not love as emotion, but love as strategic commitment to your success. Real allies protect your reputation by correcting your behavior in private. They refuse to let you embarrass yourself publicly. They won't let you walk into a meeting unprepared. They won't let you send that email written in anger. They won't let you stay weak just because weakness is easier to manage than excellence. Look at your circle right now with brutal honesty. Who challenges you? Who makes you sharpen your thinking instead of just validating your feelings? Who risks your disapproval to tell you what you need to hear? If the answer is no one, you don't have a circle. You have an audience, and an audience will applaud you right up until the moment you're no longer entertaining. Then they'll move on to the next show. This is where most people fail the test of strategic thinking. They choose comfort over growth. They choose validation over truth. And then they wonder why they're surrounded by people who don't actually make them better. Sign 2. They see your monster and don't run. Everyone has a public face. The mask you wear at work, on dates, in social situations. It's the version of you that's competent and composed and in control. The version that's socially acceptable. The version that follows the rules. Most people only love your mask. They fall for the performance, not the person underneath. But underneath that mask lives something else. Your shadow, in the language of shadow psychology and Jungian analysis. The rage you suppress because expressing it would be inappropriate. The fears you hide because admitting them would make you look weak. The thoughts so dark you've never said them out loud because you're afraid of what people would think. The ugly ambitions you're ashamed to admit because they don't fit the nice person narrative you've constructed. That's the real you, and most people will abandon you the second they see it. Not because they're bad people, but because your authentic darkness threatens the story they need to believe about human nature. They need to believe people are fundamentally good, fundamentally safe, fundamentally controllable. Your shadow disrupts that narrative. Machiavelli understood that human nature contains both the fox and the lion, cunning and force, civilization and savagery, the capacity for both elaborate cooperation and brutal violence. He argued that effective leaders need to know how to use both aspects, but that only works if you have allies who can handle your full range without flinching. The wrong person sees your darkness and recoils. They say you're being too much, that this isn't like you, that you need to get control of yourself. What they're really saying is that your authentic self makes them uncomfortable. They fell in love with the mask, and now that the mask is slipping, they want out. They want you to put the mask back on and pretend to be the simple, safe person they thought you were. The person meant for you responds completely differently. When you drop the performance and show them the basement version of yourself, they don't panic. They don't try to fix you immediately with therapeutic platitudes. They don't shame you back into the box with moral lectures. Instead, they step closer. They look at what you're showing them, and they recognize it because they have the same thing. This is the sanctuary principle in relationship psychology. You need at least one person in your life who can witness your complete self without judgment. Not because they're saints, but because they understand something fundamental. Darkness is not evil. It's raw material. The question isn't whether you have shadows. Everyone has shadows. The question is whether those shadows can be channeled toward something useful. Think about what happens when you confess your darkest thought to someone. That intrusive idea that shocks even you. That fantasy you're ashamed of. That rage that scares you. Most people will respond in one of three ways, all of them destructive. They'll invalidate it. Tell you that's not really what you think. That you're just stressed. That you don't mean it. This denies your reality and forces you to suppress even harder. They'll pathologize it. Suggest you need therapy. Ask if you're okay. Treat you like you're broken. This makes you feel defective for being human, or they'll moralize it. Tell you that's wrong to think that way, that you need to be better, that good people don't have thoughts like that. This adds shame on top of the struggle. But someone who truly accepts your shadow does none of these things. They listen. They sit with the discomfort. They might say, I recognize that. I have something similar. Or, I understand where that comes from. They normalize the darkness without endorsing destructive action. They separate the thought from the behavior. And then, critically, they help you think about how that energy can be channeled. This is shadow integration versus shadow suppression. Suppression creates pressure that eventually explodes. Integration creates power that can be directed. Someone who judges your darkness is weak. Someone who tries to fix it immediately is arrogant. But someone who accepts it and then asks how it can be aimed at your actual enemies, that's an alliance. That's the kind of strategic thinking Machiavelli was describing when he talked about the necessity of understanding both the beast and the man. Sign 3. Silence speaks louder than words. Language is inefficient. It's slow, clumsy, easy to fake. You can say anything. Words cost nothing. People lie constantly, not always maliciously, but because words are cheap theater. The deepest form of human connection requires almost no words at all. Here's the test that reveals everything about compatibility. Sit in a room with someone for 2 hours. Don't talk. Don't watch something together. Just work on separate tasks while existing in the same space. With the wrong people, this creates immediate anxiety. There's this frantic need to fill the silence with small talk, with commentary, with anything to avoid the crushing weight of quiet. Why does silence feel crushing with most people? Because the silence reveals the lack of genuine connection. When two people who aren't actually compatible sit quietly together, what gets exposed is that there's nothing there. No resonance, no shared frequency. Just two separate consciousnesses occupying the same physical space, with nothing binding them together. But with the right person, silence has gravity. It's not empty. It's not awkward. It's loaded with information. You feel their presence like a warm weight in the back of your mind. You're aware of them without needing to engage with them. You're operating in parallel. No performance needed. No translation required. Just two consciousnesses running on compatible operating systems. Machiavelli observed that the best armies move as a single organism. The general doesn't need to scream every instruction because the soldiers understand the mission at a fundamental level. They've internalized the strategy. They know the rhythm. They can anticipate each other's movements. That's operational synchronization, and it applies just as much to personal alliances as it does to military campaigns. When you're with someone who's truly aligned with you, communication becomes almost telepathic. Not literally, but functionally. You catch their eye across a crowded room, and you know exactly what they're thinking. You know they're bored. You know they've identified the same threat you have. You know they're ready to leave. A micro-expression on their face contains an entire paragraph of meaning. You hand each other tools before the other person asks. You cover blind spots automatically. This is one of the subtle signs they're meant for you. It's not dramatic. There's no Hollywood moment where everything clicks. It's just this strange efficiency where the energy you normally spend managing an interaction gets freed up for actually building something together. Most people never experience this because they stay with partners who require constant explanation. You have to translate your feelings, justify your motives, defend your jokes, explain why something bothered you, break down your thought process. That's exhausting. That's not connection. That's you trying to run incompatible software and wondering why everything keeps crashing. If you have to constantly explain yourself, you're speaking different languages. You're operating on different wavelengths, and no amount of effort will bridge that gap because the fundamental resonance isn't there. You can work at a relationship. You can't manufacture compatibility. The person meant for you downloads your state of mind instantly. In a crisis, when there's no time for deliberation, they move when you move. That's not magic. That's what happens when two people have achieved genuine resonance instead of just negotiating around their fundamental incompatibility. Think about efficiency. In high-pressure situations, you don't have time to explain. You need someone who understands the play without a huddle. Someone who knows their role. Someone who trusts your judgment enough to act on minimal information. That only happens with true operational synchronization. Sign 4. They generate power instead of draining it. Machiavelli advised princes to be stingy with their resources, not because miserliness is a virtue, but because resources are finite and enemies are infinite. You cannot conquer anything if you're constantly depleted. And your most valuable resource isn't money. It's not even time. It's energy. The actual capacity you have each day to think clearly, make decisions, create something, advance your position. Most people are energy vampires. They don't mean to be. They're not sitting around plotting how to drain you, but they extract more than they contribute. Every conversation leaves you slightly more hollow. Every interaction requires you to perform, to manage their emotions, to walk on eggshells around their sensitivities. Over time, this creates a deficit that compounds. Here's how you know if someone is draining you or generating energy for you. After spending an hour with someone, check your body. Not your thoughts, your body. Do you need a nap? Is there a subtle buzzing of anxiety in your chest? Do your shoulders feel tight? Is your jaw clenched? Or do you feel clearer, more capable, more ready to work, more aligned with your goals? The wrong people drain you even when they're being nice. Because niceness doesn't equal energetic compatibility. You can have a perfectly pleasant conversation with someone and still feel exhausted afterward, because the fundamental frequency is off. You're spending energy trying to maintain the connection instead of drawing energy from it. This happens for specific reasons. Maybe you're performing a version of yourself that isn't authentic. Maybe you're managing their insecurities. Maybe you're translating everything you say to avoid triggering their sensitivities. Maybe you're carrying their emotional weight because they haven't learned to carry it themselves. Whatever the specific mechanism, the result is the same: depletion. The person meant for you functions as a generator. Ideas flow faster in their presence. Your ambition sharpens. You feel a sense of expanded capability, like you're operating at a higher level than normal. This happens because there's zero friction in the interaction. You're not performing. You're not filtering. You're not managing. The energy that would normally go into maintaining the relationship gets redirected toward building something that matters. This is self-improvement at its most practical level. You cannot master yourself if you're surrounded by people who keep you in a constant state of low-grade stress. Your body knows before your mind does. The autonomic nervous system is detecting threats and safety signals constantly. Stomach tightens when their name appears on your phone. That's your nervous system screaming danger. Shoulders drop and breath deepens when they walk in the room. That's your body saying, safe. You can relax your defenses. Listen to these signals. Your body is running a calculation based on thousands of micro-interactions. It knows whether someone is safe or dangerous long before your conscious mind catches up. That gut feeling when you see someone's name isn't random. It's data. The parasites in your life will defend their position with history, with guilt, with stories about how much you've been through together. They'll remind you of the good times. They'll promise to change. They'll make you feel like you're abandoning them. But Machiavellian strategy doesn't care about sentiment. It cares about results. If someone consistently drains your capacity for excellence, they're not your friend. They're a liability you're too attached to cut. And every day you keep them in your circle is a day you're choosing their comfort over your growth. That's not loyalty. That's cowardice dressed up as virtue. Sign 5. They defend the fortress. Everyone claims to be loyal. It's cheap to say. The word gets thrown around constantly. I'm loyal. They're loyal. We're all loyal. But what matters is what someone does when loyalty becomes expensive, when defending you costs them something, when standing with you creates real risk. Machiavelli was deeply cynical about human loyalty because he'd watched it evaporate the moment circumstances changed. He saw allies become enemies overnight. He saw people swear eternal bonds and then betray each other the instant a better offer appeared. People are loyal when you're winning, when you're powerful, when associating with you carries benefits, but pressure reveals who's actually bound to you and who's just orbiting your temporary success. Real loyalty isn't blind obedience. That's what weak people think loyalty means. Real loyalty is shared risk. It's skin in the game. The person meant for you doesn't just stay in your life when things are good. They double down when the ship starts taking on water. Not because they're stupid, but because they've tied their fate to yours. Your victory is their victory. Your destruction is their destruction. They cannot afford for you to fail because they've bet everything on this alliance. Here's the fortress test. Imagine 3 scenarios. First, you fail publicly, lost the job, startup collapsed, scandal hit, social media turned against you. Who stays? Who reaches out? Who defends you when you can't defend yourself? Second, you succeed dramatically. Promotion, money, recognition, fame. Whose reaction feels genuine versus who suddenly reappears after months of silence with a friend request and a favor to ask. Third, you're in conflict with someone powerful. Someone who could hurt them if they take your side. Public dispute. Messy situation. Unclear who's right. Who takes a side? The cowards hedge their bets. They say things like, both sides have good points, or let's not get involved, or I'm staying neutral. That sounds wise. That sounds mature. But it's not nobility. It's a person preparing for your potential downfall, so they can survive it by claiming they were never really on your team. They're keeping one foot in each camp, so they land somewhere safe, regardless of outcome. The warrior stands back to back with you. They understand that an attack on you is an attack on the alliance. They'll defend your name in public, even when it's unpopular, even when it costs them social capital, even when it would be easier to stay silent. Then critically, they'll correct you in private. That's the nuance people miss. Strategic loyalty isn't agreement. It's protection of the united front combined with honest internal assessment. In public, they say we stand together. The decision is made, we're moving forward. In private, they say that decision had flaws. Here's what you missed. Here's how we fix it going forward. This is Machiavelli's insight about the prince needing advisors who can be honest in private while maintaining unity in public. Watch how people talk to you about others. If someone gossips to you about their best friend, they're absolutely gossiping about you to others. The math is simple. If they violate someone else's trust to entertain you, they'll violate your trust to entertain someone else. The person meant for you operates like a vault. Your secrets stay locked. Your reputation gets protected as fiercely as they protect their own because they understand your reputation is their reputation. This is relationship psychology stripped of romance. You need people who have skin in the game, who lose something significant if you go down. That alignment of incentives creates a bond stronger than any emotional connection. It's not pretty, it's not poetic, but it's real. And reality is what Machiavelli cared about. If this cuts through the noise, understand this is surface level. There are techniques too sharp for public platforms. Click join for uncensored deep psychology. Most stay comfortable. You're different. Sign 6. They're terrified of your wasted potential. Most people prefer your mediocrity. Not consciously, not maliciously, but your average performance makes them feel better about their own stagnation. If you stay broke, they don't feel guilty about their financial situation. If you stay out of shape, they don't have to confront their own lack of discipline. If you stay safe, they don't have to examine their own cowardice. This is the crab bucket mentality in action. When one crab tries to climb out of the bucket, the others pull it back down. Not because they're evil, because the one climbing makes the ones staying feel worse about themselves. Your ambition is an implicit criticism of their comfort. These people will sabotage your growth with concern. They'll ask why you're working so hard. They'll suggest you relax. They'll hint that you're changing, that you're becoming someone they don't recognize, that success is changing you. What they mean is that your evolution threatens the story they tell themselves about why it's okay that they haven't evolved. Pay attention to how people respond when you share an ambition. When you say, I'm going to build this, I'm going to achieve that, I'm going to become this type of person. The mediocrity enablers will respond with skepticism disguised as realism. That's hard. Are you sure? What if it doesn't work? Have you thought about the risks? They're not protecting you. They're protecting themselves from the discomfort of watching you try. The person meant for you has the opposite reaction. They look at you and see a gap between what you are and what you could be. And that gap makes them impatient. Not because they're cruel, because they have vision. They see the raw material. They see the wasted capacity, and they refuse to watch you settle for less than what you're capable of achieving. When you share a small ambition, they ask, why not bigger? When you want to quit, they remind you who you claimed you wanted to be. When you win, they celebrate authentically, and then immediately they ask what's next. This can feel exhausting if you're looking for comfort. But if you're committed to self-mastery, it's oxygen. Machiavelli wrote that a prince who isn't wise himself cannot be wisely counseled. The implication is brutal. You need people around you who are operating at a level that pushes you. If you're the smartest person in your circle, you're in the wrong circle. If no one intimidates you slightly, you've surrounded yourself with inferiors, and inferiors cannot push you toward superiority. The person meant for you should make you want to be better. Their excellence should create a kind of productive discomfort, not jealousy, not competition, just this awareness that there's another level available and you're not reaching for it. They become the catalyst for your transformation because they refuse to enable your comfort. This is signs they're meant for you in action, not making you feel good all the time, not accepting whatever version you present, actually caring enough about your potential to become an inconvenient force in your life. Most relationship advice misses this completely because it's focused on harmony. But harmony without growth is just coordinated stagnation. It's two people agreeing to stay small together. Think about the people in your life who push you versus the people who coddle you. The ones who coddle feel safer. They validate your excuses. They agree that circumstances are hard. They never make you feel inadequate, but they also never make you grow. The ones who push you are uncomfortable. They challenge your excuses. They hold you to your own stated standards. They make you feel inadequate sometimes, but they also make you capable. Sign 7. Your wins make them feel like they won. Watch someone's eyes when you share good news. The words will usually be correct. Congratulations. That's amazing. So happy for you. I'm proud of you. But words are theater. What matters is the micro-expression in the half-second before they remember to perform the socially appropriate response. Most people experience a flash of something ugly when you succeed. Tightness in the jaw, a glance downward, a slight coldness before the warmth. Then they'll pivot the conversation back to themselves, or they'll immediately add a concern, or they'll diminish the achievement with, "Yeah, but the economy is crashing," or "Cool, but be careful," or "That reminds me of when I did something similar." These are not bad people. They're just operating from scarcity. Your victory feels like it subtracts from their potential because they believe there's a fixed amount of success available. If you get promoted, that's one less promotion in the world. If you get recognition, that's recognition they didn't get. If you build wealth, somehow that makes them poorer. Your light makes them feel dimmer. This is jealousy at its root. And Machiavelli understood that jealousy is one of the most destructive forces in human relationships. It starts subtle, a slight discomfort when you succeed, a minor resentment that gets rationalized away. But over time, it metastasizes. The jealous person starts to undermine you. Not obviously, they're too smart for that. But through subtle sabotage, through damning with faint praise, through concern trolling and risk highlighting, and constant reminders of potential failure. The person meant for you operates from abundance. They understand that your victory expands the kingdom rather than dividing it. When you win, their eyes light up like they personally won. There's this genuine surge of excitement. They lean in. They want details, not to steal them, not to compare themselves, to savor them, to experience your victory vicariously because they're genuinely invested in your success. This is called compersion in relationship psychology. It's the opposite of jealousy, the ability to derive authentic pleasure from an ally's success. It's rare. It requires security in your own path. It requires genuinely caring about someone beyond what they provide for you. It requires abundance thinking, where someone else's gain doesn't equal your loss. Here's the strategic thinking behind why this matters. If you cannot celebrate victories around someone without dimming your light to make them comfortable, you're in the presence of an enemy. Maybe a polite enemy. Maybe an enemy who doesn't even know they're undermining you. But someone whose insecurity requires your smallness is someone who will sabotage you the moment the opportunity presents itself. Machiavelli understood that envy creates dangerous allies. People fear what they cannot control, and they envy what they cannot achieve. If someone fears your rise, that fear will eventually turn into active obstruction. They'll start creating problems. They'll start highlighting risks. They'll start positioning themselves as the voice of caution and reason, while actually just trying to keep you at their level. But if someone celebrates your rise because they see themselves rising with you, you've found something irreplaceable. This is the signs of true love in the strategic sense. Not emotional love, not romantic love, but the love that comes from aligned incentives. When your success is their success, they have every reason to help you win. When your failure is their failure, they have every reason to keep you sharp. Sign 8. The ledger balances without counting. Every adult relationship is transactional. That sounds cold until you realize it's just honest. The fantasy of unconditional love is for parent and infant. Between functional adults, there's always an exchange of value. Time for time, energy for energy, support for support. The question is whether that exchange feels oppressive or natural. With the wrong people, you're always initiating. You text first. You make the plans. You ask how they are. You remember their important dates. You carry the emotional labor. You're the one reaching out. And if you stopped rowing, the relationship would stop moving. This creates resentment. You start keeping score. You start thinking about all you've done that hasn't been reciprocated. You start feeling used. This is the slow death of relationships. When one person is carrying the whole thing, and the other person has gotten comfortable with that arrangement, it's not sustainable. The person carrying eventually burns out or builds resentment, and the person coasting either takes it for granted or feels guilty, both of which poison the dynamic. With the right person, reciprocity happens without scorekeeping. 1 week, you might carry 80% of the load because they're in crisis. They lost someone. They're struggling mentally. They're overwhelmed with work. Next week, they carry 80% because you're sick or stressed or going through something. There's no spreadsheet, no mental tally. You trust their intent. You know they're contributing to the unit, not extracting from you. This is the law of equivalent exchange applied to human connection. You cannot sustain a relationship where the value flow is unidirectional. Eventually, the person giving more will burn out or build resentment, and the person giving less will either take it for granted or feel guilty, both of which poison the dynamic. Here's the test Machiavelli would approve of. Stop initiating contact. Just stop. Don't text. Don't call. Don't plan. Don't ask how they are. See what happens. If silence follows, if days turn into weeks and you never hear from them, you have your answer. The relationship was held together entirely by your effort. It was artificial. You were doing all the work while they were just along for the ride. But if they notice the absence and reach out, if they ask where you've been, if they make an effort to reconnect, that's a sign of mutual investment. That's someone who actually values the connection enough to maintain it. The person meant for you respects your time and energy as much as their own. They don't play games with attention. They don't leave you on read for 24 hours to prove they're busy. They don't make you guess whether you matter. They value the connection, so they maintain it. Simple, adult, efficient. This is where relationship advice usually fails because it's too focused on romance and not focused enough on respect. Respect means treating someone's resources as sacred. If someone consistently treats your time as less valuable than theirs, if they constantly cancel plans, if they're always late, if they expect you to accommodate them but never accommodate you, they don't respect you. And without respect, everything else is just performance. The balanced ledger doesn't mean everything is exactly 50-50 at all times. Life doesn't work that way, but over time, over the arc of the relationship, things should balance out. You shouldn't feel like you're always giving and never receiving. You shouldn't feel like you're always the one making effort. That feeling of imbalance is your intuition telling you something important. Listen to it. Finding someone with all 8 signs is rare. Maybe 2 or 3 people in a lifetime, if you're fortunate. These are outliers. Most people will have some of the signs, but not all. Most people will be compatible in some areas, but not others. When you find someone who scores high on all 8, you've found something precious. And precious things require protection. But finding them is only the first challenge. Keeping them requires strategy. And this is where most people fail. They think compatibility is enough. They think natural alignment means the relationship will maintain itself. Wrong. Entropy is the law of the universe. Everything decays without intentional energy. Relationships are no exception. If you want to keep someone powerful in your life, you need to make yourself irreplaceable to them. Machiavelli wrote that men love at their own pleasure, but fear at the pleasure of the prince. Translated into relationship dynamics, you cannot control whether someone loves you emotionally. Emotions fluctuate. They're influenced by mood, by circumstance, by chemistry, by 1,000 variables outside your control. But you can control how much they need you functionally. You can become so valuable in specific ways that losing you creates a gap nothing else can fill. This isn't manipulation. This is strategic positioning. You're not tricking someone into staying. You're making yourself genuinely valuable so they choose to stay, because the alternative is worse. There's a difference. Identify their deepest struggle, the thing they cannot solve alone, the problem that keeps recurring in their life. Maybe you're the only person who understands the complexity of their thinking without them having to translate. Maybe you organize the chaos they cannot manage on their own. Maybe you calm the anxiety that hijacks them during stress. Maybe you see patterns they miss. Find that place where you're not just nice to have, but structurally necessary, and own it. This requires you to be actually competent at something they need. You can't fake utility. You can't pretend to add value. You have to develop genuine capabilities that solve genuine problems. But once you do, once you become the solution to something they struggle with, you shift from optional to essential. Second, create a third entity. This is crucial. 2 people staring at each other will eventually run out of things to say. The relationship becomes about the relationship. You're focused on each other, managing each other, negotiating with each other. That leads to stagnation. But 2 people staring in the same direction can walk forever. You need a shared mission, a business, a family, a creative project, a philosophy you're building, a community you're serving. Something bigger than either of you that gives the relationship purpose beyond just enjoying each other. This transforms the dynamic from me and you to us against the problem, us building the thing, us pursuing the goal. When there's a mission, minor conflicts become irrelevant. You don't break up over dirty dishes when you're conquering something meaningful together. You don't get hung up on whose turn it is to plan date night when you're building an empire. The shared stakes anchor the bond. This is Machiavelli's insight about how the strongest alliances form around mutual interest rather than mutual affection. Think about business partners who stay together for decades. It's not because they always like each other. It's because they're building something together that neither could build alone. The project binds them. The shared investment keeps them aligned. The same principle applies to personal relationships. Third, maintain an edge. This sounds harsh, but it's real. A relationship without any fear of loss becomes a relationship where effort disappears. If someone is absolutely certain you'll never leave no matter how they treat you, they'll eventually treat you poorly. Not because they're evil, because humans take guaranteed things for granted. This is psychology of love at its most practical. You maintain edge by continuing to improve yourself. Stay valuable. Stay interesting. Stay in motion. Have a life they're part of, not a life they are. Keep developing skills. Keep building relationships outside this one. Keep pursuing goals that matter to you independently. When someone looks at you and thinks, if I mess this up, someone else will take my spot, they stay conscious. They stay appreciative. They stay engaged. This isn't threatening them. This isn't playing games. This is staying worth keeping. It's maintaining the standard that attracted them in the first place. Too many people get comfortable and stop growing. They stop taking care of themselves. They stop pursuing their interests. They make the relationship their entire identity. And then they're confused when the other person loses interest. Machiavelli understood that without consequences, behavior deteriorates. With healthy stakes, people rise to meet the standard. You're not manipulating them. You're creating an environment where their best behavior is rewarded and their worst behavior has costs. That's not cruel. That's how functional systems work. We've covered how to identify strategic allies and how to secure them. But before you go hunting for these 8 signs in others, turn the mirror around. This is the part most people want to skip. They want to learn how to evaluate others without evaluating themselves. That's backwards. If someone with perfect alignment walked into your life tomorrow, would they recognize you as an equal? Or would they see someone emotionally reactive who can't control their responses? Someone lazy with their potential who talks big but executes small? Someone drowning in drama and debt and dysfunction? Would they see someone with the 8 signs, or would they see someone who needs to develop them? You attract what you are, not what you want. This is fundamental to human nature, like attracts like. High-value people filter aggressively. They can afford to be selective because they have options. If you're not operating at a certain level, you're invisible to them. You're not even in the consideration set. Machiavelli watched princes fall because they weren't worthy of the power they inherited. They wanted loyal advisors, but they punished honesty. They wanted capable allies, but they made decisions based on ego instead of strategy. They wondered why everyone around them was weak, never realizing they'd selected for weakness by rewarding it. They created the very problem they complained about. If your circle is full of parasites and yes-men, that's not bad luck. That's a filtering problem. You're tolerating behavior that drives quality people away. You're rewarding mediocrity with your continued attention. You're making yourself available to people who don't deserve access. And then you're surprised that your options are limited. High-value people have standards. They ignore noise. They ignore complaints. They ignore victims. If you're constantly broadcasting that no one is loyal, that everyone disappoints you, that the world is against you, you're telling strategic people to stay away. You're signaling that you're a drain, that you haven't taken responsibility for your situation, that you're still in victim mode. Before you can bind powerful allies, you need to become someone worth binding. That means killing your neediness. Stop requiring constant validation. Stop needing people to reassure you. Stop making your emotional state everyone else's responsibility. Develop internal stability so you're not constantly seeking external fixes. Master your emotional reactions. Stop responding from triggered places. Stop letting your mood dictate your behavior. Stop burning bridges because you were angry in the moment. Develop the capacity to feel something without immediately acting on it. This is self-mastery at its core. Build something that matters, not for approval, not for attention, for the actual value it creates. People respect builders. They respect people who are making something, fixing something, creating something. If all you do is consume and complain, you have nothing to offer a high-value alliance. Embody the 8 signs yourself. Stop flattering others to get approval. Tell people the truth they need to hear. Accept people's shadows instead of requiring perfect presentation. Become an energy generator instead of a drain. Be loyal when it costs you something. Push people toward their potential. Celebrate others' victories. Balance the ledger naturally. Be the person you're trying to find. When you do this, something shifts. You stop chasing. You start attracting. Not through manifestation or positive thinking, but through the basic principle that competence recognizes competence. Excellence calls to excellence. Strategic minds find each other because they operate on frequencies most people can't even detect. This is self-improvement at its deepest level. Not affirmations, not vision boards, not morning routines and productivity hacks. Actually becoming formidable enough that when you encounter someone operating at a high level, they pause and think, "There you are. I've been looking for you." Finding the person meant for you isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of the real work. Life is difficult, tragic, unfair. Walking through it alone is possible. Machiavelli proved that in exile. But it's cold. To find another consciousness vibrating at your frequency is the greatest strategic advantage you can possess. It transforms survival into empire. It turns struggle into shared mission. It makes the unbearable weight of existence feel lighter because you're not carrying it alone. But these people are rare, outliers, statistical anomalies. If you have one, guard that alliance with everything you have. Don't let ego destroy it. Don't let pettiness burn the bridge. Don't let laziness rot the foundation. Because outside those walls, it's just ghosts and actors and predators waiting for you to drop your guard. If you're alone right now, don't despair. Use it. Sharpen yourself. Build value. Become so formidable that when you finally cross paths with your strategic equal, they have no choice but to stop. The signs will appear. The silence will speak. The fortress will stand. The empire will rise. But only if you're awake enough to see it coming and strong enough to keep it once it arrives. The war begins now.